Carrie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie. As you can see, I am part of Orange Nation Toastmasters. I've been in Toastmasters for 3 years now, only in the corporate setting. I've done varying different roles. I've done secretary, president. I'm currently VP of Education, and I'm also an area director now as well, which is really fun. I've seen a lot of the challenges with corporate clubs, definitely with getting support, and I think we're going to talk through a lot of that. So I'm hoping to really share my knowledge with you because it can really be hard to get engagement sometimes. So again, I'm really looking forward to talking to everyone here and also learning myself and things that I can take back to my club.
Thank you, Carrie. Jennifer.
Thank you, Bruce. My name is Jennifer Magee. I am with City of Oshawa Toastmasters, as Bruce mentioned. I started Toastmasters late 2017. It was something I wanted to do forever, but with my work schedule, I was unable to join the club. So that's one of the things I think we'll address today is having that availability during your work schedule and having the support from your management to join. And that was what actually got me into the club and has allowed me to just take it as far as I can. I started out just on the cusp of Pathways. I was the only member in my club, had even heard of Pathways, and the only one working in Pathways for over a year. So the first thing I did was become VP of Education. Because there was no one else to support me, I figured I'd have to support myself. I went to the VP club officer training before I was an officer, just to try and figure out what I was doing and find out how I could contribute. So I stayed on as VPE for 2 years. I'm currently our club treasurer, which again is a different role in a corporate club. So I'm hoping to give some insight from my experience, which is very new, and also gain some experience from our other panelists that I can take back to my club. Last year, I was the Area 45 Director in Division E, and that was where I stepped out of my corporate club and learned so much more about what is going on in Toastmasters and what other clubs look like. And it is very different. This year I'm Division E Director, and one of the first things I spoke to Wendy about when she gave me that call to say, what do you want to see this year, is I wanted to see a focus on corporate clubs. Because all of the training I had done, all of the club officer training I had done, I still felt that I was lacking some information in order to support my club fully. I feel that and we'll touch on this, but one of the best things you can do for your club if you are in a corporate environment is to step outside your club walls and learn and see what Toastmasters has to offer, and that way you can grow your club. And I'm sure we'll be addressing that today with Bruce as our panelist, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Holly.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Holly Stringer. I am the Manager of Employee Development and Wellness at Durham College. Part of my role there is to come up with different professional development opportunities for all of our faculty and staff. And one of the things that I kept hearing was they wanted leadership experience, they wanted presentation skills. And so I decided Toastmasters, I'd heard about it. So very recently, just at the very end of 2019, we started the process of trying to get a Toastmasters club up and running at Durham College. So we officially chartered in February 2020. So it's been a really challenging, bumpy start with COVID and everything, but we have a very strong club. I'm the president of the club, and happy to talk a lot about recruitment and also just forming a new club, because there's definitely certain challenges when it comes to trying to form a corporate club. So happy to be here and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Maria.
Thanks, Bruce. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Akaia. I've been with Toastmasters for about 3.5 years with my corporate club, which is Toast to Your Health, as Bruce introduced. I joined in April 2017 and took on the role of VP of PR pretty much right away. It was election period when I joined. I did that role for a year and elected to do it for a second year. I enjoyed it so much. Halfway through that second year, I took on the role of interim club president because our club president had left the agency for another club. I think that's one of the issues that comes up a lot with corporate clubs is attrition. I was then elected to be club president for that following year. I am currently VP of membership and past president within my club. I've also taken on the role, like Carrie, of area director for the first time. I'm in Division I, Area 83. The designation that I've earned so far is my CL, the competent leader. I haven't done a lot of speeches, but I find that I have naturally gravitated to the leadership path that Toastmasters program also offers. Like Dave, I too am really excited about this workshop, happy to share the successes that our club has experienced, and looking forward to hearing what has worked for other clubs as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. And back to you, Moody.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me fine?
We can hear you. You're sounding good.
Okay. My name is Moody Abdul. My first name is Moody. It's commonly confused. I get a lot of emails that are like, "Hi, Abdul." I started the first Toastmasters Club at Accenture Canada, which is in Toronto. And we started it in January. We had our kickoff meetings right before COVID. And then right as we were about to charter, we all got sent home. And so we had to figure out, before even really getting our roots down, how to do this virtual. And I actually think that was one of the best things that could have happened to us, because we didn't have any, oh, but we used to do it this way or that way. Everybody was fresh. We went right into virtual meetings, and we've been running virtual meetings weekly since. I'm currently the president of that club called Pitch Please. It was kind of funny how we got that name. We put it to a vote. Obviously, everybody kind of put up their hands. What name do you want? And the group loved that name, so we can't say no to the majority. And aside from that, before I joined Toastmasters, and the reason why I actually founded the club, is I had been a public speaking coach for a few years before joining Accenture. And when I got there, I realized that people wanted to get better at public speaking, but they didn't have the proper avenue. So I thought, what better way than to start a Toastmasters Club?
Excellent. Thank you. So when I said we had a panel of experts, I wasn't kidding. Here they are. This is your panel for today's discussions. We'll move right on into our first discussion point. We have 4 that I've picked, and I actually just thought of one more. The first question and challenge to many corporate clubs is recruiting new members, especially if it's a closed club, because you have a very limited audience. So what are some of the challenges? My question to panelists, what are some of the challenges in recruiting members, and how have you addressed those challenges? And to kick off that discussion, we'll turn it over to Holly.
Great, thanks so much, Bruce. I'll start with just the beginning, because it's a relatively new club. We started by having a few info sessions where I promoted to all employees and faculty across the college that we would have members from Toastmasters on campus to answer questions and to give them an idea of what it's about. So we had quite a lot of interest at both of those sessions. We also did a mock meeting so that people could kind of sit around the room and observe what a meeting actually looked like. So from those 3 events, I was able to pick a really strong executive team of people who were going to be my core members. Durham College had a Toastmasters club several years ago that actually, because we lost so many members, it ended up just dissolving. One of the challenges we have that's probably unique to us is the college system. A lot of the faculty and employees are gone for the summer. So what would happen is you'd have a few months where people weren't coming, and then you come back in September, everyone was super busy, and then so that's what happened last time. So I wanted to make sure we weren't going to run into that issue again. So I created this really strong core team, because I know even if we lose a couple members here and there, I'm going to have that dedicated core that's going to keep us going even through the summer. So we survived the summer, so that's good news. I think that worked. What we're doing now is we're doing a lot of word of mouth in terms of recruitment. I've reached out to my current members and said, bring a friend. We'll have like a bring a friend day. They'll come in and just kind of be a fly on the wall, observe what the meeting is about. They know that we're not going to be calling on them or making them have to speak if they're not comfortable. And that's actually worked quite a lot. They've come in, they've observed, they see how comfortable we are with each other, what a great group it is. And we've actually been able to recruit members that way. But recruitment is definitely difficult. We are a closed club, so it's only open to employees. But so far, we've been able to keep our charter status, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue to do so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Lots of strong points there, good points. I picked out of that you started off with a strong core team, and that was intentional to carry you through those difficult months. And I also caught in there something I believe in strongly is word of mouth. You can advertise all you want, and that builds awareness, but word of mouth is what gets people out. I firmly believe that, and I thank you for bringing that out. Our other panelists is what's been your experience, or what would you add to that? And it's on recruiting new members, recruitment. Jennifer?
Jennifer, go.
It is difficult. Not going to lie. What happens is when people come into the workplace, they're focused on their job. They think, how am I going to fit something else in? Am I going to get the time to do this? I also think that we all know, whether we're a corporate club or an open club, speaking scares people. So it's how you position it, especially in the workplace. People are overloaded, and it's their coworkers. So these people are going to see every day, and they think, oh my God, if I look awful up there, I don't know what I'm doing. So what we're trying to do, and again, we're struggling with this just like everybody else. What we're trying to do is position it as, and what are the benefits? I mean, in Toastmasters, what we're always doing, what is your why? What are the benefits? So we're trying to show our coworkers what benefits we're taking away from it. The other thing too is trying to, of course, we're going to talk about buy-in from your employer, but if they're investing in you, they want to see results from you. So how I did it, how I was able to join the club and get my set lunches every week to enable me to attend, was I let them use me wherever they need someone to speak. I offered that. I said, this is what I'd like you to do, but in exchange, please use me wherever you would like to. If there's something I can present, if there's something I can do as a presentation. I'm in customer service. There's not a lot of opportunity for that, but we do have corporate meetings. So my coworkers see me doing this, and they know I'm on the Toastmasters executive, but they also know I'm in the club. So it's about positioning, what do you want out of it? But we've positioned is, do you interview well? Did you get that last job? How do you present yourself? Do you do presentations in your job? How do you bring things forward to your boss? So position it from a corporate aspect of what it can do to help their job. And in that word of mouth, in conversation with people, as opposed to just posts and things like that. Because we do market differently than open clubs.
Very good. Moody, I think you had some...
Yeah. So on the issue of recruitment, we started off really strong, sending out a survey to the whole kind of office, generated about 200 people who were interested. So we thought, wow, we're going to be good here. Then we had meetings where we could only fit 50 or 60 people, and it was packed. And then out of those 60, we had to choose 25 because that's what our corporate sponsor was willing to fund. Now, we knew that people can join and pay for their own membership, as many people do. But in our case, we actually did not want more than 25 people initially, because those who wanted to pay, who weren't chosen, who had to pay, we felt there might be some kind of unfair dynamic there. So we wanted to wait a little bit before allowing people to come and join. So we had 25 strong membership because the company was paying. We had an attendance requirement. So we always had about 20 to 22 people show up. It was really great. Where we ran into issues is when people started leaving the company. And once we've already paid for a membership, you've had 6 months. We did it for 6 month periods because we knew things might change. So we funded people 6 months, 2 people left. So we selected 2 new people. And as soon as we paid for one of those, that new person, they also left the company. And so there's this issue of there is going to be that attrition, that money kind of thrown down the drain that we don't really know how, if we can switch that over to somebody else. We're trying to figure out, how do we get the company to just fund as many people as they want? Or do we just start asking people for them to pay for their own membership.
All good. All very good points. Carrie and then Dave.
I think, first of all, everyone has made amazing points so far. I'm definitely learning along as I'm sharing with everyone, but I think one thing that cannot be overstated in a corporate environment is word of mouth advertising. So at the end of the day, everyone on the exec team especially should be ambassadors for your program. So for example, for myself, I've always been recruiting people all the time. I'm just constantly doing it. I do it all the time, even if I'm just talking to a coworker or a colleague. If they ever mention, hey, you know, I'm finding it a bit challenging with my communication and all this, I immediately bring up Toastmasters. And I think something that's really crucial is when you're recruiting people, you have to sell with a story. And ideally a member that started off that could not speak at all and then now has visible improvement. So I sell with myself, because when I started, I couldn't even do an introduction in a team meeting. And now I've done presentations to the entire company that I have, which is 1,000 people. It was virtual, but it just goes to show when you sell with that story, it makes such a big difference. People are really able to see themselves more when you're saying, hey, this is the personal impact it's had on me. Also something I've done, I've been in my company now for about 5 years, so I have a lot of different connections. What I started to do is take 5 to 10 minutes in team meetings, not my team meetings, other people's team meetings, to share my story. Because I find when you're able to sell with a story versus just, hey, you're gonna get better at public speaking, it doesn't have the same impact. So again, that's my advice to everyone is always sell with a story.
Okay, thank you. David, what are your thoughts?
Before I start, let's do a quick sound check. Bruce, are you able to hear me? Just give me a thumbs up.
You're sounding good.
Awesome. So I have a quick comment on what Carrie had to say, and I love the fact that you were stressing that we're all selling stories. If we want to make any kind of impact out there, regardless of what it is, whether it's Toastmasters or any other group or organization or event that we're trying to get people to come along into, we have to persuade them somehow. And there's nothing more powerful than a story. And so I'll tell you my story in terms of, from a corporate perspective. 2 years ago, I approached the human resources department in the company that I work for, which was, at the time, they were International Financial Data Services. And it turned out by sometimes these things just work out. By this very strange serendipity moment, the director of human resources, who was recently hired, had come in with a particular agenda of promoting soft skills. So the timing was so right. When I approached and this person came in, and we just kind of matched. And from those conversations, I'd say 3 years ago, sitting down conversations, and to what we built just prior to the pandemic starting was quite remarkable. So I'll give you a couple of points of what it is I tried to do. The jury's still out on the success, but here's what I tried to do. I tried to take Toastmasters, or what we do inside Toastmasters. There are a couple of points, right? We know we're about public speaking, and we're about leadership. Those are two of the primary competencies, public speaking and leadership. And I thought, well, for me personally, ever since I joined Toastmasters, I've always wanted to take some aspects of Toastmasters and use it in my own personal life. And so I took my own kids, I'm sure some of you have done that. I took my own kids on the Toastmasters journey by starting up youth leadership groups in their schools, in their classrooms, and also in the communities. I brought my kids along with me. They didn't have a choice. And I would stress to you, do the same thing with your kids. Don't give them a choice. Just do it for them. And so from pretty early on in my Toastmasters career, I started recognizing, well, wait a second, we're not silos inside Toastmasters. We're all learning these really incredible skills. But is it purely about me going to a meeting week after week and just practicing those skills in front of the same group of people? No. And to Carrie's point, if my vision is to take those skills that I'm learning out into the community, I have to sell the story. And the story I sold to IFTS is we're learning. We've got, I forget what the number, membership number, 25 to 30 people. We have 25 to 30 people learning a skill set in a group week after week that the company is sponsoring. Why do we not allow these associates to then start presenting these soft skills back to the organization? And the reason why I clicked with the HR person, her name's Andrea. The reason why I clicked with Andrea at the time, because on several levels. First of all, that was her intent coming in as a new learning and development director to start pushing soft skills into the organization. And two, when she started looking at the cost, you know what, all this stuff comes down to how expensive is it? Should I send my people to Carnegie? Should I send them on these expensive courses? Or what if we look at something like Toastmasters that costs what, really? We have to talk about cost, right? Let's be real. $150 a year. It's, quite frankly, you guys know this, it is nothing. I don't even know what we're talking about. $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it is. It's a ridiculously low cost for the benefit that we're getting. And Andrea got it. She immediately clicked. And so one of the first things that her and I initially jumped on was we created a concept called Learning Bite. And in Learning Bite, we took those very people who within our Toastmasters group were channeling their way up through the Toastmasters group, at that time it was the older curriculum. They were going through all the manuals, the advanced manuals and so on. And we said, hey, we want you now to come and present, not just to the 20 to 25 people in the club. We want you to present to 1,000 people because we recognize how valuable that skill set is. So we went through that the first year, the second year, but now, and this is why I specifically wanted to come to this panel and have this discussion, because I find in the pandemic time, in this time that we're in, we're coming up against new challenges virtually. And it has to do really with attendance and grabbing attention. And I'm hoping that I can take away from this discussion something that I can go back to my own club and clubs with as to, okay, we're doing all this great stuff in terms of the synergy between the Toastmasters group and the corporate environment. Now it's how do we maintain that? How do we keep that going? So that's sort of, I don't know if I've answered any questions, Bruce, or raised more questions, and I apologize if I'm raising more questions, but in truth, these are questions in my own mind. So I'm going to stop here and allow somebody else to speak.
That was actually very good points you raised, and especially, and it's one of our topics is getting management and HR involved, and it sounds like you did that. So we'd be interested to know, was that successful in recruiting members and getting people? Those efforts, was it worth it?
Well, here's the story. I don't care what people say. Everybody loves to get a little pat on the back. And if all of a sudden you've gone from presenting to 15 to 25 people to 900 people, you're going to get some recognition. Everybody loves that. Alone is a selling point. Yeah. So if that makes any sense, yeah, there's recognition on all sides.
Yeah. Maria, you want to share your thoughts?
I do. I just want to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Carrie said about the sell, right? And the value of the sell and selling with a story. In a corporate club, I think it's really important to highlight that being a member of Toastmasters, the skills that you gain from that, and being on the executive panel, being a leader really adds to your resume, whether internally for a promotion or for another job. And I think that's something that's really, really, really important when you're in a corporate club, is adding that to the sell.
Telling myself to unmute. So the career benefits. Good. I hadn't put it on the list, but while we're on the topic of recruitment, if anybody on the panel wants to share, how have you changed your recruitment methods, or what impact has it had on recruitment with the current pandemic. I'm sure many of you have large numbers of staff working from home now, working remote, so you can't get them together for a meeting. You can't, at the coffee machine or in the kitchen, just have a casual conversation with Toastmasters. Does anybody want to share how the pandemic has changed impacted and changed your recruitment methods? Start with Carrie.
Thanks, Bruce. I think this is a great question. And again, I think it's all about how you position it, right? There's a way to look at COVID, and I know some clubs have been struggling to go virtual. My club has actually had the opposite effect. So once we started going virtual, we actually have gotten way more members. The reason being for that, I think one of the reasons is you don't get that 2-second or 2-minute conversation in the hallway with people. You're not getting these interactions anymore. We're all working from home. So yes, we still have business meetings, but we're never just connecting with people in a non-work environment. And really, Toastmasters, right, it's not work. At the end of the day, it's something fun to do. We kind of have a fun environment. So that's how I'm trying to sell it now, to say, hey, like maybe you're not doing a lot of things in the evening anymore due to COVID. Maybe you're just kind of at home a lot. This is a fun way to get your communication skills better. And I think some people have actually said to me, okay, like I want to do something during work hours that isn't work. And this is a great opportunity for me to do that. So again, it's all about how you can position it when you're talking to people.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Just go ahead and unmute.
So to continue on with what I had, the conversation that I started, what we're doing in the month of September at my office is, and this is not my initiative, I'm just piggybacking off the initiative. The HR group has created a Learn at Work month to simulate September. It's natural for everybody to think about school, particularly, we're in college and university, we traditionally go in September, our kids at the end of summer and so on, the kids go back to school in September. So September, for some reason, this learning is on the mind of a lot of people, including me. And so what the club did is we decided to piggyback off the organization's Learn at Work month by presenting Toastmasters in different ways. So again, it's another driver. It's another way to get an audience. It's another way to tell the story. It's just another way to get interest, to raise interest for the club. And one of the things we're actually doing is very similar to this. We're having an introduction to pathways. And we'll discuss pathways more in this panel discussion, but what we're doing for the entire organization is showing or attempting to demonstrate that the new educational curriculum of Toastmasters lines up very closely with what quite a bit, if not the vast majority of organizations out there is looking for in their staff. And so we'll continue. It's another way to tell the story, because it's basically you're telling people, well, what you're looking for, I have, and it's very accessible to you right now. So that's what we're planning to do in the coming weeks. As a matter of fact, on September 22nd.
Yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity your company has for Toastmasters to piggyback on. Other thoughts, comments? Even in our audience, even though you're not in the panel, you're welcome to share ideas in the chat, or if you have questions, the Q&A, share your ideas there. We'd love to hear from our audience. And if you have anything relating to the question right now, recruitment, or the pandemic, go ahead and type those questions in and we'll raise that with the panel. So even though it is a panel discussion, you are welcome to contribute and ask your questions. So please make use of that. Anybody, anybody else want to speak to that? Oh, we have one comment here. How about Maria tell us about the Corporate Roadshow? I think I've heard something about that. See, your club's going to keep you honest and speaking here.
I must have a club member on the as a participant here. So yeah, we did a ton of different programs and means of trying to get the word out there that our club existed. When I joined, I knew very, very little about our club, and in speaking to other employees throughout our agency, very few people knew that we even existed. So one of the things that we did was we used the intranet, our corporate intranet. We tried to really look at the resources that were available, and resources that that had the most exposure to everybody within the agency. Intranet was obviously one of them, and we also had a weekly newsletter that went out to all staff about any highlights that had gone on the previous week and anything that was coming up in the weeks to follow. So we kind of used that to our advantage and decided to create a roadshow. We put together this great presentation. Bruce, you'll probably remember that little presentation.
Yep.
And yep. And we decided to promote that we were available to do a roadshow, take 15 minutes of a team meeting of any team. There are several teams throughout our agency, and they basically scheduled time with them and went out and did a quick presentation about who we are. We promoted the fact that the agency covers our membership fees, which also wasn't known to the employees, and basically it took that opportunity to really socialize to smaller teams who we were and what we were all about, and that conjured up a lot of conversation, and we gained a few members through doing that.
I think
It was
I
a
was
great
actually.
program.
I think I was actually part of one of the very early road shows, and our first presentation was to your team. So
That's right. That's how I joined. Actually, it was through one of those presentations. And that wasn't the roadshow program that we had. I think you were
okay,
invited to our meeting.
yeah,
But then from there, we thought it would be great to do a roadshow and just, gently ask if they would like 15 minutes of, if we can take up 15 minutes of their meeting to just tell them who we are and what we're all about and how our club could really benefit their professional journey.
yeah. So that actually segues into our next question, getting support from management and HR. David's touched on it briefly, but let's move into some more discussion on that. We were able to go in and present when I was with Toast Your Health to the teams because if there were it was hard at first, but there was enough management support that they would let us into a meeting for 10 minutes to 15 minutes to do our thing.
That's right.
And then, the club continued to build on that and become more popular. But Maria, maybe, okay, you've already told us about the road shows, but maybe you want to speak to how you use those and other methods to get buy-in from management and to human resources.
Right. I thought that part of the success of our club was to get more support from our senior management, and HR was no exception to that. We partnered up with them, so we actually set some time aside and presented our club and everything that Toastmasters had to offer to everyone within the HR team. So we started the roadshow idea actually was presenting to the full HR group so that all of the HR members knew who we were and what we were all about. A lot of them didn't even know that we existed. And then through that, they were really impressed with who we were and what we were all about. We were able to inject our club into their new hire presentation. So whenever a new hire join the agency, they do a presentation about everything that we have within the agency. And we had a couple of slides. We injected a couple of slides in there as an introduction to new people coming in. And then they also had a leaflet or a package that new hires would get. We also had HR agree to including our quarterly newsletter. That was something else that we introduced as well to get our name out there, was we put that newsletter into the new hire package, and those two things alone just really, really helped. And then we again, with HR's permission and support, they allowed us to kind of highlight the professional piece of the program, and we did a New Year's resolution promotion or membership drive in January. And every week we had a different feature on our intranet, And it was all about investing in yourself. And the first week we had this really fun picture of a brain with a dumbbell, and it was all about exercise your mind. Join Toastmasters and exercise your mind, because everyone's thinking about exercise at the beginning of January, right? And then the following week, it was all about developing your self-confidence. And then the third was boosting your communication and listening skills. And then the fourth was about building on the important leadership skills. So that program alone drew a lot of attention to our intranet site. And again, more visibility, more members, more interest. So.
Thank you, Maria. So
Yeah, no
on the topic of getting support and encouragement and buy-in from management and human resources, I'll open it up to the rest of the panel. Just go ahead and unmute. Jennifer?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, that is how I got into Toastmasters. I knew, because I'd heard of Toastmasters before, I knew that our organization had a club. And I wanted to join, but because of the nature of my job, I'm in customer service, so we are a call center environment. Our schedule is very detailed. Our breaks are very set. We only get 45 minutes for lunch, etc. I never bothered to go for the club because I knew I couldn't fit it into my schedule. What happened was I approached my managers and my supervisors. The opportunity came up quite perfectly, actually. Our HR was implementing a new way of doing their employee reviews. And so what they did was they started with some staff members from different departments that would be on the pilot program to work out and see how this worked. And so we were on this for months. And part of that process was towards the end, one of the questions they ask you is, how can we as a corporation help you to develop yourself here? And what can we do? Where do you want to see yourself? And I literally said to my supervisor, I want to join Toastmasters. I would like to attend the weekly club meeting every Wednesday from 12 to 1, and I don't get the same lunch every week, and I only get 45 minutes, and can you make this happen? So they did. They set my lunch every Wednesday. Sometimes they forgot and I had to remind them. They set my lunch, and the good thing about that was because they gave me the time, I went every week. Some of my coworkers, they'd missed the meeting, they'd signed up for something, they had to not attend because they didn't block that time out in their calendar. But mine was blocked out simply because my supervisor allowed it. Fast forward, once that pilot was over and they were implementing the program full for staff, I had to go through the review again. So this time, when it came to that question, I said, I'm loving Toastmasters. Thank you so much for investing in me. And I think that's really key as employees. If you let your manager and you let your supervisors know what you're doing with your Toastmasters, how it's helping you, if they see the results of their investment in you, not so much HR, because HR doesn't necessarily know who I am. You want HR to know, but start with your immediate supervisors. Let them know what you're learning. When you, as a VPE, send in that submission for your employees or for your club members for their awards, don't ask them if they want their supervisor to know. Send that recognition to the supervisor. Don't ask, because most of them go, no, it's okay, I don't want them to know. Send that email so the supervisor gets it, so they know what they're investing in. So when I went to that second meeting, I said to my supervisor, thank you so much. I'm loving the club. This is what I'm doing. Thank you for your investment in me. And what I would do is each time I went out for something, so I went for area director, I told them about it. When I was going out for division director, I asked my manager to write me a letter of support. So I was getting backing from people outside of Toastmasters. And then my next thing was, I said, please use me wherever you can. If you have a speaking opportunity, if you have a presentation, I do silly things like I do the recordings for the messages at work sometimes. Thank you for calling the city of Oshawa, please hold. Like I get to do those because I've asked. So yes, HR, absolutely. Get your executive, meet with them. We want to, at our city, for example, we notice now with our new website, it's on our intranet under different training opportunities. I didn't even know it was there. We've asked if we can be a part of the onboarding package, like Maria said. Can you be? So I'm getting so many ideas, and we'll be doing even more. But start with your supervisor. Start with your manager and get that support there. because they're completely backing me all the way through. And, you know, they got one of those little things. I finished my level 4. I got an email from my supervisor saying, congratulations, good job. So start with your immediate supervisor so they know that they're investing in you and they're getting something out of you.
Yeah. David.
I want to, if I can ask Maria a question, because I don't know about the other panelists, but I have found a shift in focus for Toastmasters since we've gone into the pandemic environment. I found that, so I belong to 3 clubs and I attend a 4th meeting. So I'm going to 4 meetings a week. And I'm seeing shifts in focus. And I'm wondering if Maria, from her perspective of being closely aligned with her HR group in terms of onboarding and so on, if you've seen any kind of shift, or maybe it's just particular to the club meetings and the clubs that I belong to, and perhaps it's just, and if it's isolated to just those clubs, hooray for us. But I wonder if there's a wider issue of less people attending meetings, less focus, less engagement in the curriculum. And maybe anybody can take it, but I'll start off with Maria.
Good question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. So we're still trying to figure out how to best optimize our virtual space and how to inject more fun. One of the things that we were doing when we were all in person, because we met over lunch, was that nobody really got a chance to eat during lunch on meeting days. And that was a little bit of an issue for me. I like to eat, and I'm sure that was true for other people. So we would often have food in our lunches, and you know, food always kind of brings people together. But I would say that we've seen that too, Dave. We've seen some people become a little bit less engaged, and I think because we meet during lunch, still our meeting times haven't changed. And when you're at home and you've got your family around, especially during the summer, that might change now that kids are off to school. But you know, the commitment to have those meetings during that time when you're in your own home space becomes a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm hoping that we're going to see it shift back to more participation in the next coming months. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. Carrie.
So I kind of have a different perspective from my organization, so I'm hopeful this will be helpful to everyone on the call today. So I have a very unique situation with mine, just a little bit of background. I work for a tech company. Our headquarters is in Toronto. It's where we have our biggest office. We have offices all across Canada and the US. They're sales offices though, so they're pretty small. So when we started, obviously it was in person. We only have a Toronto location at this point. It's our biggest office. It makes the most sense. The other offices, it wouldn't make any sense. So because of that, we've struggled working with HR because they don't want to broadcast it to the entire company if it's only in Toronto. So that's been our unique challenge. I've actually personally, I'm in HR. I have personally talked to the senior VP of HR and said, hey, you know, I really would love it if the company could sponsor this, because they don't pay for everyone's membership. It's a bit unfortunate. They're kind of relying on individual managers to cover it for people, and depending on budgets, I know I get mine covered, but not everyone else does. So that's a bit of a challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not a lot of money. I tell people this. I say, hey, you could spend $1,000 on a public speaking course for 2 days. So it's really not a lot of money, and the money shouldn't stop you from joining, but we've definitely had some challenges. I know on my end, just because I know certain high-level people, I've tried to book meetings with them directly with different VPs to sell them on Toastmasters, partly to come to the meetings. I know one of our VPs came once. His schedule is pretty packed, but I want him to be able to cascade that down to his managers. So that's really kind of how I'm trying to do it. Because we can't broadcast it company-wide, we have to be a little bit more creative with how we do it on our end.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Yeah, Holly.
So I work in HR, so that gives me a bit of a leg up. I also deliver all of the new employee orientation, which is great for recruitment purposes. got support right away in terms of bringing Toastmasters to Durham College, we actually sat down as an executive group and tried to decide whether we wanted to ask for them to pay for it or not, which sounds kind of funny at first. You think, of course, you want the company to pay. But we were thinking along the lines of, so I do other professional development. What'll happen is I'll pay a fortune for someone to come in and speak. I'll have, 60 people registered, 10 people show up, right? Because they have no skin in the game. So we were like, if no one has any skin in the game, are they going to really take this seriously? Are they going to attend the meetings? So it was a real back and forth for our executive team as to whether or not we were going to even ask our CAO to cover it. At the end of the day, we did, and they are covering it. But what I did in order to sort of get people to have that skin in the game was I created a form at our organization. What it does is they had to fill it in sort of like an application form. They had to bring it to their manager to have managerial consent. And there's a stipulation in there that says they have to make every effort possible to attend meetings, and that if they aren't, HR will come after them, but not in that kind of language, obviously. And you know what, it's really worked a lot. So it is covered for them, but they still feel there's that accountability piece, which was really good. So that was something that we implemented that I think was really helpful for our club to get people coming. So.
Yeah, Jennifer.
May I comment on that? I think Holly is right on the money when she says skin in the game. Because when I joined the club, everything has a lull. Right? I think the Toastmasters Club at our organization had been quite large and quite vibrant just before I joined. And then, you have a turnover again with corporate club. People move on, people retire, people go to other jobs. So some of the key players in our club had moved on to other opportunities. So when I came in, I think it was at a little bit of a lull. I remember bringing this up when I got in the executive about accountability for attendance, because we were talking and we were struggling about people showing up and people engaging. And, you always have your core people, like your 5 or 6 that diehards are always there and they're sharing roles and they're filling gaps, and you can exhaust those people. And they start to get a little bit like, why am I always being the chair? Why am I always carrying the load? I just want to come and do my speech, or I just want to come and enjoy the meeting. So not to say that you don't want to participate, but sometimes you don't want a role every week. So I agree with what Holly's saying. I brought it up at a meeting once about, hey, what about our attendance? Hey, what about, because I was thinking back end, I was thinking, what if one day, all of a sudden, HR just wants to do a review of how they're spending the money? We're also a municipal club. We're not just accountable as a business. We are a municipal club. So everything that's spent is, the taxpayers' money, essentially, right? We're a corporation, but we are accountable not just to ourselves. So I had this in the back of my mind, and I thought, okay, that's something we need to think about. So we did at one point reach out to our members and say, hey, remember, your organization is paying for this. We need to see you. The organization is going to need a return on investment. So I, for one, would love to see a copy of that form, if Holly, if you're willing to share, or even just a template that you utilize. I think it's something great. It's not to scare anyone off. It's just to let people know that they're investing. It's true. It's like anything. My daughter just started college this week. I said, there's a difference between going to high school. Yeah, I'm paying for high school through my taxes, but now we're paying for college. Or if you go back to school as an adult and you're paying for your college. What you invest in, you work harder at. So I think it really depends on the dynamic, even with Carrie, with your organization, perhaps there's an opportunity where some departments pay half and you pay half, and that type of thing. I know personally, I've been really lucky where I utilize the letter that says about corporate payment for your convention. And I was able to attend convention because I was showing results from my Toastmaster investment, and my manager was able to put that into our budget for the year. So it all depends on how it's positioned, and I think every corporate club will have to do what suits them best. But I think Holly nails it right on the head there. It's really important to know that people understand the value.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any final thoughts or comments on management and HR?
I
know
just want to say
Yep, go
I
ahead.
totally agree that I love that term, having skin in the game. I'm totally on board with that. But here's something I want to throw to the panel and to the wider group. I suspect as we get deeper and deeper into this pandemic that some corporations that have previously been sponsoring their clubs will now want to pull those funds back. And so the challenge for those clubs who have not had skin in the game is, okay, how do we now develop skin in the game? And those are ongoing conversations that we all have to start having, particularly those of us who have traditionally belonged to a sponsored club. I don't know what the answer is, other than, again, trying to sell a story about how beneficial Toastmasters is to somebody who previously had no skin in the game. I mean, what we try to do from a fully sponsored club to maintain engagement was partially suspend people if they didn't attend a certain number of meetings consecutively. That was part of our rule. If you didn't come to at least 3 meetings in a row, you're on the outs, and you'd have to then formally apply to us again to get back in. But it's a little worrisome for me if the corporate funding it disappears. I'm not sure what exactly will happen. I mean, we're going to have to be really creative to come up with new funding. Anyway, just a few thoughts.
You had mentioned earlier, somebody had mentioned earlier that the cost of Toastmasters is so insignificant, and I'm sure many of you are dealing with professionals, so it's not like your audience is minimum wage. So, I would think that would go back to the benefits of Toastmasters, and the cost for what you're getting is insignificant, especially if you're on a professional salary. Thoughts or comments on that?
I think that's a good point. I think it was someone mentioned you could spend $1,000. I think Carrie mentioned you could spend $1,000 going to a seminar. I've attended lots of different seminars, different conferences, etc., and they're all expensive. And one of the things I brought back to my club, because I was one of the only members who'd ever attended a conference, and when I came back, I said, "Holy cow! For the amount of money you invest, you get so much out of it." And those big things you go to, you see speakers, you can buy a book, but at the Toastmasters conference at the end, Cheryl Roche is standing there with her own, jump drives, having pictures with you and saying, "Here's my personal email. If you're looking at the accredited speaker program, contact me." It's a completely different environment, and I think that's another thing we need to convey to our members. If they've ever done one or the other, they're like apples and oranges. There's such a minimal investment of money and such an available resource of free additional training. That's the other thing I did want to mention is, in addition to what you're learning in your club, if we can remind our clubs and our executives at the corporate level to promote everything that's happening. Like, look at us, we're here on a Saturday. None of us are working today, right? We're all here, we're all corporate clubs. We're here on a Saturday in our homes talking about our corporate clubs. There are so many opportunities through our district and through Toastmasters that are free. The training is way beyond what happens in our clubs. And that's another thing we can add to talk about what the value is. The other thing is, since we are corporate clubs, I was just thinking that if we get to a position where many of our clubs require payment from the employee, and Holly, she's in HR. I mean, for example, I pay for my underground parking, it comes off my paycheck. Perhaps there's that ability where corporations can cover the dues, but the members, it comes off their pay. So there's still skin in the game. The corporation is supporting you in that way. But there's always that to look at as well, depending on your organization, of course. But there's lots of things that we will have to look at coming through this pandemic. We just have to do things differently.
Good point. We have a couple of HR people here. I'm going to put this out. I'm not telling you to do anything you shouldn't, but prior to having official buy-in from HR, we had one lady in HR who was a Toastmasters member, and she would quietly on the down low slip it into the onboarding package. I'm not suggesting you do anything that'll get you in trouble. I'm just putting it out there. So
I will say, I know you're being a little facetious there, Bruce, but I will suggest, though, that with regard to the onboarding package, it's an amazing way to recruit new members. That's one of the strategies that we adopted a few years back, was to make sure that the Toastmasters Club had a presence during the onboarding presentation, so that as the young people coming fresh out of college and university and are entering the workforce, one of the opportunities they're presented with is, hey, there's this great organization within the company you've chosen to work with who is offering you at a very low cost, or maybe corporately sponsored, these amazing soft skills that can only benefit your career. And again, going back to the story, why would you want to come? Because it would benefit your career. So I am a big believer in that whole onboarding process as a recruitment tool.
thank you.
There is, sorry to interject, but in what Dave's saying, there is a project in Pathways which is about interviewing. One of our members recently literally did an interview as one of her projects, and I asked the questions. She told me what the position was, she gave me the job description, etc., and that was one of the things. So there's so much value to this from a corporate and professional level that people don't understand, and that's why I love too that Pathways has now opened up so that you can see what the projects are, you can present where you can put that in. And also I've had a lot of conversation with Chris Nelson over time about how you can get creative with what you use in your pathways. You're still following the path and you're still doing what the project is, but you can get creative in your mind about how you want to position it so it benefits you. You're just not doing these things because they're requirements like a high school course. You're doing them as how they will benefit you as a Toastmaster and how you will grow your skills. So that's another thing to position it as, what is available in those pathways programs and how do they lend themselves to us as employees and value-added employees.
And I'll
Thank
just
you.
add on to that if I could really quickly. One of the things I try to highlight for our new employees is that it's an opportunity to work with people from across the organization. When you work in a really big place like Durham College, we have thousands of employees and faculty. One of the things that my members love is they are working with and getting to know people that they would have never crossed paths with, because all the way on the other side of the organization, or their faculty, they're in a totally different category. So when you have new people coming, I often say this is a fantastic way for you to get to know people all over the place and also grow your soft skills at the same time.
And I'm just going to piggyback a little bit on what Holly just said, was the networking opportunity is huge, and also another selling point of the story of the value of Toastmasters. Open houses are a great opportunity, and one of the things that we did was had the CEO be our guest speaker at an open house, and we advertised that like crazy, had a really great turnout, and then we had the VP of HR be another guest speaker at another open house. So having them participate in our open houses was really effective for us.
Thank you. One question that came in, or a comment, thoughts of corporate clubs participating in the Toastmasters District 60 Open House Month in October. I believe that the corporate clubs do have open houses. Obviously, your audience and your advertising would be a little bit different. Do all of you do open houses? And maybe one or two, just have to, watching the time, one or two want to share how you promote your open house or how you do it differently than maybe an open club would. Yeah, Jennifer.
So prior to COVID, I work in City Hall. So we have a common lunchroom on the 3rd floor. So one year, a couple of years, we set up in there. We take turns as club officers. We rotate, and we would do it over a couple of hours because a lot of people have different lunch hours. And we would have materials, and we had our area director attend, that type of thing. And sometimes we got some people, sometimes we didn't. A lot of times people just avoid you because they're afraid of Toastmasters. And they think, I have to do speeches, and they run away. The next time we thought, maybe the lunchroom is not where everybody goes, because not everybody goes to lunchroom. So we were going to do this year's pre-COVID in our front lobby of City Hall, because that way when our staff are coming in and out. Now, of course, with COVID, we don't have everyone working in the building. We can't gather in the building of that nature. We have very strict governmental protocol. So we utilize our intranet, which is a great tool. But one thing we have is we have a staff appreciation barbecue that is held for our employees. It's city council puts it on, and the management and HR, and they do that for all of our departments. And that's the beautiful thing, like when Holly and Maria were saying about you get to see people from other areas. I am in a club now with people that I would never see. I'm in customer service. I don't see, I talk to people on the radio or on the phone, but I don't necessarily see all the guys in IT and all the people in engineering and all the staff in budgets and our meter maintenance guys and park staff. I don't see those people regularly. So what we've done the last couple of years is although open house month is October, our staff appreciation is September. We did a table last year and the year before. Last year we stepped it up a notch because one of the girls on our executive has a PR background. So she had a Yardsy game of pathways. So you'd roll the things and it could tell you what path was good for you. We had table topics on it was out of the park, so on all of the picnic tables. So it would just start conversation between not everybody's going to do that. So I went around and walked around to every table and talked to everyone when I was there for my hour and asked them and told them about Toastmasters. And of course you have a draw. So you put people on a list, put their name in. As a club, we put up baskets and everybody put their name in for the draw. We did a little email after to say, hey, thanks for coming out. Would you like to come to our meeting? It doesn't necessarily bring in a lot of people, but it gets the word out about who we are. So I'm in direct sales. I have been for almost 20 years. And one of the things about direct sales is relationship. They always say that a no now isn't a no forever. Sometimes it's timing. So you're just planting seeds with people in the organization. They get to see you, they get to know who you are, and they see people from all different organizations or areas of the company. So that one open house, I put people's pictures and then their story up on the glass. So what job did they have? Why did they come in? And what have they gotten out of it? So that was a good, I don't want to say a ploy, that was a good tactic. So now when we shift to online, we are going to speak with our contact in HR, but putting on the internet. We put on the carousel. We have little highlights of some of our people, and that's what we'll be doing this year. So those are just some ideas of what we've tried to do over the different years to just let people know who we are and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Wilson has a question, but Wilson, I'm going to hang on to that because I want to talk about the pandemic a bit later on. I'd like to look at the next point. Is we are all very busy, especially people in the corporate world. You've got meeting after meeting after meeting. You've got heavy workloads, you've got deadlines, and often the issue in the corporate world is, and even when I was there, you have somebody scheduled to be the Toastmaster or have a speech, and 2 minutes before the meeting, you get a panic phone call, I can't make it. And it happens on a regular basis. So I'd like to get some ideas or some feedback on finding time to attend the meetings. So Jennifer, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really, really important that people put it in their calendar. I'm very fortunate. There's 2 of us in my department that are in the Toastmasters Club. We're also both on the executive. Once she came back to our department, she also had to ask, hey, can you accommodate my lunch? It's difficult in our department. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes only one of us goes. But for the most part, we are fortunate to be committed. Now, during the COVID period, our department is completely different. So the 2 of us have been absent, unfortunately. But that will change as our schedule gets more stable. One of the things that I've tried to recommend to my fellow members is put it in your calendar. Being a municipal organization, that calendar is open. Your Outlook calendar, I mean, aside from private things that you mark private, but your meetings are in there. People know, and you can see each other's calendars. And I've had that happen where someone in one department will say, oh, I was going to do table topics. I had them all good to go, but I'm now being called into a meeting. So what I'm trying to encourage anyone in a corporate environment is you are allowed to take a lunch. Like Maria said, we get to eat. We're allowed to. And in some organizations, they are mandated, right? I am set with my lunch schedule. So I just really encourage being dedicated to yourself. It's not just self, it's not personal. I mean, you're not running to the mall to shop. You are investing in yourself within your organization. And I think our members need to understand that we are allowed to put that on as a meeting on the calendar. And when people are booking with you, they will respect that time frame, unless there's something urgent. If you're in budgets and it's budget season, or if you're in certain departments and something comes up that's crucial, of course you're flexible. But I think we owe it to ourselves, and all of our members are deserving enough that they can slot that in. So that's my first focus. The other thing I notice is we are a very flexible team. We're always being on our lunch and running into the meeting space. Our SAA is not the person who sets up the room. It's whoever gets in the room first. We're setting everything up because it's a main meeting room. So we're all doing it. We work completely as a team. Everybody gets everything out. We get the meeting underway, and then we pack up together at the end. So the other thing too is to know that you're going to support each other. And if somebody can't do table topics, you send your stuff to the next person and say, hey, can you cover me? Or, can you stand in for me? And I think we all recognize in a work environment that that is going to happen. But my first and foremost thing is please be dedicated enough to yourself and recognize that you are deserving of that time. And if you put it on your calendar and are respectful of other people's time, they'll be respectful of yours.
Thoughts or comments on that, Carrie?
Yeah, it's very interesting. This is something I'm really passionate about. I have been in various different roles at my company. And again, there are busy times in certain roles, certain months that are challenging. At the end of the day, and I have to be careful how I word this sometimes, but it's all about your priorities. Jennifer was talking about that a little bit, but it's what are your priorities in your workday? And yes, there's going to be some times where you just can't come, and that's okay. But I really try to have these one-on-one conversations with our members, with guests, to say, hey, like, this is your development. Sometimes we've had challenges where some managers don't see the value in it, but I think where that comes back is you start going more, you start doing speeches, and then hopefully you start doing more presentations in your work group, and then that manager will see the ROI. They will really see the value at that point. But the biggest thing I do is I really try to have that one-on-one conversation with our members and guests to say, hey, at the end of the day, this is your development. It's a voluntary thing you can do, but you really need to make the time for it. The time may not always be there. You need to be able to make the time for it.
So Bruce, can I add a comment here, Bruce?
Yep. Dave.
I'm going to speak from the perspective of the pandemic. And for sure, we are seeing new challenges, primarily, I think, because we no longer have human touch. I mean, if you're in the same environment with people and you belong to the same club or you belong to whatever organization and you're seeing them on a regular basis, you get to chat, you get to connect, you get to touch. In the virtual world, that physical connection is gone. And so I feel what we're seeing a lot of is out of sight, out of mind type of a scenario playing out. My suggestion to VP Eds out there, and if there are any VP Eds out listening to this discussion, my suggestion to the VP Eds is, and I will piggyback off Jennifer's point about the calendar. She's absolutely right. It's got to go in the calendar, but I'm going to challenge the VP Eds. You be the one to put out the invitation, the calendar invites to your members. And you be the one, VP Eds, to put it out at least 2 weeks in advance. I like that 2-week window because it means that you're not playing around with the last minute trying to find, to fill positions. But if you were to, and now because of the pandemic, you have to send out reminders. At least that's my experience. Somebody else might, have another opinion. But what I'm seeing is we have to constantly send out reminders. Okay, this is happening on such and such a date. These roles are still not available. Who is signing up for it? And at moments, VP Ed, you may actually have to volunteer some people to take on roles. So there's a bit of a push from the VP Ed and from the fellow execs of the club to actually ensure that that we're not doing, running around at the last minute trying to fulfill roles. This is a very unique moment in our space and time that we're experiencing, and I feel we have to come up with perhaps tweak the normal processes to suit what is actually going on in front of us. Particularly, again, I'm going to go back to that lack of a human connection. It breaks connectivity with a lot of what we're doing with each other. And so we have to find unique ways. And I'm just going to touch on Wilson's question a little bit about open houses in the pandemic. Wilson, what I would suggest is the big draw. I've always said, I've said it to everybody, hey, open house in a live environment, the biggest draw is food. You put food down, I don't care who it is, everybody loves free food. They're going to flock to your meeting. You put down, you get that new fancy restaurant around the corner to come in and cater into your meeting, they're all going to come. But we can't do that anymore. So now we have to find a new strategy. Again, it's going back to Carrie's story. What's the story about the open house? Well, Wilson, you're now going to have to find a hook. You know how musicians create songs and there's always a hook in the song to pull you in? Well, you now have to create a hook. And the hook let me give you a hint. The hook for me with an open house in this pandemic time is to get an awesome speaker. You get an awesome speaker. And I think it was Maria who said, you invite the CEO. You invite the CEO or the head of your community or somebody that everybody knows to come and speak, they will flock. You have to look for that hook. Just like the food was the hook, we no longer have food, you have to find another hook. Back to you, Bruce.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on engagement or finding time for meetings? Moody had to drop off. He had other commitments, so he sends his apologies for dropping off early and his thanks for joining in. So, other thoughts? Okay, so I'd like to change topic, just look at another area now that we've touched on very briefly, but not much, is what are the challenges you are having and how are you dealing with it? Getting members to start using Pathways. Pathways is the only education option available to us now. What has been what percentage of your members are on Pathways? What percentage of your members are you doing Pathways speeches, and your thoughts on that and how to get them more involved to increase that engagement. To start off that, let's, David, your thoughts.
Well, Bruce, the shift from the old curriculum to Pathways was, I found, a bit challenging for a lot of members that I came across. And so, I mean, it had to do with technology. We're now online versus the manuals. It had to do with change. I mean, quite honestly, I'm not a big guy on change either. But the more I dug into Pathways, Bruce, is the more I started seeing the new value, the amount of effort and time that somebody at the headquarters put into this curriculum. And I started seeing that it's a way more complex curriculum and profound curriculum than the previous one. And I'll give you an example. What I found with Pathways offers, okay, there are 11 paths, right? You know, coaching and planning and leadership, 11 of them. But inside those 11 paths, and this is the truth, this is the sweet sauce of Pathways, what I'm about to tell you guys right now. This is the sweet sauce. Inside the 11 paths, are 5 core competencies. 5. And if you ask me to list off the 5, they have to do with public speaking. Public speaking, communication, leadership, management, and confidence. Let me repeat that. These are the 5 competencies, right? Public speaking, interpersonal communication, strategic leadership, management, and confidence. So what Pathways is saying is that across 11 paths, by the time you're done, 1 path, 2 paths, you will cover all 5 of these core competencies. Now let me further develop the secret sauce that I was talking about. You go to any organization, any organization, I don't care who it is, across this country, from Newfoundland to British Columbia, and you talk about those 5 core competencies of Pathways, they will most likely tell you that those are the very competencies that we're looking for in our staff. And that is the home run with Pathways, right there. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I'm sold. I am sold on Pathways. It's a no-brainer going forward for me. Because you look at, okay, you get to practice in a fun environment. You get to network, as somebody on the panel was saying. You get, the cost is ridiculously low. And you get to practice in a safe environment where there's not the added pressure of it being your job on the line. It's an environment that's safe enough, and these very competencies that you are getting better at or getting to practice and learn is what you can then take back into your organization. Not sure how many of you have done any of the paths as yet, but tell me, aren't some of the projects that you're actually encountering in these paths not immediately applicable to your work environment? It's quite remarkable. They've done a really good job. So for me, that's how I choose now to sell Pathways in the organization that I belong to. I'm not taking it from to me, I remove Toastmasters from the conversation. Whenever I talk about Pathways, I go, it's an educational curriculum is the way I talk about it. And I go, corporate X, this is what Toastmasters is offering as its educational curriculum. It totally lines up with what you're looking for. It's actually a no-brainer now for us to do this and get together. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I see that tying back too to your discussions with HR and management when you look at those core competencies. I hope everybody's taking notes because I think that would be a good test at the end. We'll have all our guests. You got to write a test. What are the 5 core competencies? We should all remember that. It wasn't fresh in my mind, and that is so critical in selling this. So great point. Carrie.
Yeah, so one of my favorite roles on the exec team is VP of Education. I've done it a year. It's my 2nd year doing it. What I do is 30-minute info sessions with all our new members. When we get a new member, I book 30 minutes. I go over Pathways. We use Easy Speak, so I just give them an intro. And the way that I talk about it, I've actually finished a path. So I think having people that have finished a path in your club is helpful, even if it's not many. Have a few people. But the first thing I say is the projects get very, very, very relevant to the working environment at level 3. And I really try to remind people of that, to say level 1 and 2 are really just introductions. They're trying to get you into public speaking. But once you get to level 3, I'm doing one right now for a PowerPoint presentation. Who doesn't do PowerPoint presentations? There's an interview one, there's leading a project. Like you have to do that in the work environment. And that's why Pathways, I mean, it's such an easy sell. Like everyone in our club is on it, except for maybe some newer members that haven't selected a path yet. But it's such an easy sell because when you get to these higher levels, you can take this and put it into something tomorrow. And like Dave said, that's just such an easy sell for me, at least.
Thank you. Other thoughts or comments on Pathways? Yep, Jennifer?
A couple of things in what Carrie's saying. Yes, it is very relevant to your work environment. The other beauty is we're corporate clubs here, we're talking. You have coworkers that are going to be in your meetings. So if you're doing presentations or you're doing things that tie into your paths, you get evaluated while you're working. How perfect is that? It's ideal, right? It's ideal. You're right there. And if they're not in that meeting, you say, hey, are you free? Can you pop down to that meeting? Or can you join us online for this meeting? I was just asked to do that for one of my area directors last week. Similar situation. He had a presentation he was doing for work. And he said, if my coworker can't attend that meeting, can you pop on and evaluate? But his coworker who's in the club was able to attend the presentation he was giving at work and evaluate him. It's perfect. You're working and you're doing your path right there. The other thing is, I think Dave is right. You just present it now as the educational curriculum. When I first joined, Pathways, as I said, was just starting. I sat in our presentation, our first presentation of Pathways at our corporate club with Tony Nelson, our Pathways guru. He's got the t-shirt. And I sat in there and he's like, okay, so who has done the survey? And I was like, I was the only one. Who's heard of Pathways? I was the only one. But that was because everybody was in the midst of their corporate communicator, corporate leader, all of those things that I got the books. I never even cracked them because why would I bother? Pathways was starting. That first year was difficult. It was a hard transition. Pathways was new. Carrie, you work in tech. How hard is it to implement something new? I work in customer service. When we get a new system for us, how hard is that to adapt? Of course, change is difficult. But now, I don't think there should be so much conversation about, I know it's hard, but you have to transfer. It's the only project. It's the only learning system. So now it's just a matter of, okay, so have you done your survey? When it first came out, one of the things we were trying to do to get 100% engagement was, as an executive, we picked a couple of people in the club, and each of us, our goal was to touch base with them and say, hey, have you done your survey? Have you done to find out what path you're on? And if back before COVID, I would literally stop by their office. Hey, you got 10 minutes? Let me set you up. It's so easy. Okay, email me when you're done. Let me know what path you're on. And that worked for the 3 people I popped by their office. It takes 10 minutes. And how I position, I say to people, so how many surveys have you done on Facebook to find out what Disney princess you are? What's your favorite donut? What sitcom mom are you? You'll spend all that time in rabbit holes on Facebook to find out irrelevant surveys about who you are and why your second toe is longer than your first toe, but you won't sit down and do a survey to find out what curriculum you should be on. I think you have to make light of some things for people and just kind of put it in perspective. I literally made a proclamation to my club when I was the only one on Pathways. I was practically in tears. I didn't know what I was doing. I was struggling. And I said, please, will you do the survey? And they're all like, well, what's it take? Like 20, 30 minutes? I said, it takes 10 minutes. So we ended the meeting early. Everyone went to their desk, did the survey, and we all emailed each other what their path was. So you can make light of it, but really they can't move forward. They can do nothing if they're not on Pathways. Sorry, that's my dog. He's attending the meeting also. The second thing is, yes, 1 and 2, easier. I always say repetition. You work out every day when you want it. You eat well every day. You sleep every night. We brush our teeth every day. Why not do an icebreaker every time? I always say, for people who say, oh, I don't want to do another icebreaker, I go, I am more important than one icebreaker. I've got lots to say about myself. I think the club can benefit from an icebreaker 11 times for each path. The other thing too is when you're giving feedback to your members who are giving those icebreakers, show them appreciation. Dave said earlier, everyone loves a pat on the back. I love learning about the members in my club. I love learning through these icebreakers, 3 to 5 minutes or 4 to 6 minutes, something new about them. So that's the other thing. The other thing too is if you have a bunch of new members and they're all jumping on at once, you can do an icebreaker challenge. That's what we did. We had all our new members sign up and we would have 1 or 2 meetings where it's just icebreakers. That's it. And everybody signs up and then they draw their names or they volunteer to go first and you get all the icebreakers out of the way. So just make it fun. I mean, it really, if you're a Toastmaster, there's nothing else for you to do here except Pathways. So I mean, we have to do it. You might as well enjoy it. But I go with the lead with the Disney Princess quiz. I guarantee they'll do the quiz for you.
Thank you. Okay. We've had a great audience, and actually everybody is still here. I think only one person from the audience. Holly's going to have to leave us shortly. And if anybody has to leave, but this has been such a great panel discussion. People are engaged. I'm going to add one more topic if maybe one or two people want to speak to it. And that is, how has the pandemic impacted your club? And how are you dealing with it? We've already had one question come up that Dave addressed. Thank you for the open house, and having some type of a hook is great. But it's affecting people's engagement. It's affecting how we draw people in, how we recruit. It's affecting open houses. But Dave, you shared one idea there for the open house. Does anybody have any nuggets, any good information to share on how you're dealing with the different challenges from the pandemic? It's just totally open. And it's even open to our audience. Type it into the chat.
Well, like I said earlier, as I was alluding to, I'm seeing a drop-off in attendance for sure. And it's worrisome. But so we're trying different things. I'm calling emergency meetings with exec teams to discuss it. We're now talking about moving away from a mentorship program and more to a buddy program. That's just one of the ideas that we're tossing out there. We haven't implemented, but we're talking about it. And I'll tell you what I mean by buddy system. So the traditional mentorship program, as you all know, is somebody comes into the club, they're brand new, and then you sync them up with an experienced member, and they mentor that person. Excuse me. They mentor that person through the processes of the educational curriculum. The difference and this is really something that's percolating right now. Again, nothing concrete, but the idea behind a buddy system has to do with accountability. What do I mean by accountability? If we were to line, again, it's just an idea, line everybody up in the club with somebody else, it means that you now are providing a commitment not only to yourself. Let's say you've committed to doing a speech in 3 weeks. You're not just committing to yourself or to the club, you're committing directly to your buddy. And vice versa, your buddy then commits to you. And so there's somebody that you are directly responsible for accountability. And that's sort of one of the ideas that we're coming up with during this pandemic time. We're being called to think outside of the box, ladies and gentlemen, quite frankly. If not, we're going to see a drop-off that I'm going down fighting. Quite frankly, I am going down to the last. I'm going to do everything to try and prevent a drop-off in my little space, in my little environment. And so I'm hoping that whatever I share here clicks with you guys out there. I have to think of new ways of engagement. Again, as I alluded to, guest speakers, workshops. One of my struggling clubs was seeing 10 to 12 members a week showing up. Well, we decided to do in the middle of August. We decided in the middle of August to begin planning a workshop. And so we went after one of the really excellent, more than competent speakers inside the district to deliver the workshop. Inside of 2 weeks, we now have 60 people registered. And so those are some of the ideas that I want to throw out at you. We now have to think, okay, how do we drive traffic? Think about it like that. How do you drive traffic to your organization or to your event or to your Toastmasters club? And we have to do little things like these. Bring in new speakers, perhaps tweak the standard format of the meeting. Here's another tip for you. Here's something else we've done that appears to be working with one of the clubs. We've changed table topics up. Here's the change. Rather than have everybody who's volunteering or being voluntold, as we usually do, to give an impromptu speech, let's say we have 6 people. We're now again using the buddy system. And so we have 3 people giving the impromptu speech and another 3 given an evaluation, immediately given an evaluation right after that person speaks. So it means then the evaluator only has 2 minutes to think, to formulate the evaluation in their mind. Now, this is another, we can do these unique little twists to bring in traffic. Because if we're all constantly, if we're all just doing the same thing over and over and over, it means we're not distinguishing ourselves from each other. And I challenge all of us to consider how we can distinguish ourselves from each other, of course, within the Toastmaster paradigms. But I guess the challenge that I'm putting out to everybody here is we have to think, come up with new, novel ways of doing things in this unique time and space. Bruce?
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts or comments or, yep, Carrie?
So as I previously mentioned, my club actually is doing pretty well, but I wanted to share a story of a club that's in my area that I'm area director for. So unfortunately, they had layoffs earlier this year. And I know we were talking about people leaving the company, but this is kind of an unfortunate situation, I assume, due to the pandemic. And they only have 8 members right now. So obviously very, very low membership. They basically need everyone to come every single meeting in order for it to be effective. So it is interesting because I have really coached the president to say, hey, how can you make the meetings different? Can I be a guest speaker at times? Can I get somebody from the district to be a guest speaker for you? And he is actively working with HR now as well to get more support, to broadcast the message overall. But yeah, I'm hopeful that doesn't happen to too many corporate clubs, but it is a very real possibility. Hopefully the most of that is behind us now, but it's just important to think about that. Like if you lose certain key members in your club, it can be really challenging to get back from that. I haven't experienced it myself, but it's something just to kind of think about.
Thank you, Carrie. Jennifer, Maria?
I think one of the things too is we were mentioning earlier, I think Bruce, you mentioned about everyone's on Zoom. I mean, I remember when this was all beginning, I was on Zoom constantly. I logged into the wrong Zoom at one point. Like we were all Zoomed out. And we're getting used to it, and it's become, quote, the new norm, which is the new flag going around for everything. But one of the things I think we have to remember is to just extend grace to people. I think as long as people understand that they're not being criticized or ridiculed or judged for maybe a lack of participation or a lack of availability, that's really important too, to let them know, because then it gives them the freedom to come and go when they can. You know, it's like anything, right? You do something for a long time and you're engaged and, excuse my dog, and you're engaged and then you kind of miss it for a few weeks and then you think, I'm kind of afraid to go back. It's just human nature. So I think as long as we're touching base with our members, even if they aren't attending, and let them know that they are welcome back anytime. I'm chartering a new club, and one of the things, I have a bunch of people on our list that have never come. And, you know, weeks are going on and they're not showing up. And I think maybe they're afraid now to come because everyone else is so much further ahead, because it's a very engaged group that is attending. And I just sent a recent email saying, hey, for those of you, you're on our list, we haven't seen you, but just know that you can pop in anytime. So I think it's really important to know that. I love Dave's idea about the buddy system. I am a person that operates best if I am accountable to somebody, right? I used to be a person who said, I could never work out at home. I do work out at home, but I have a whole community online that I'm accountable to. I have a coach I have to check in with. I have friends that I do this with, and I'm accountable to all of them. And that really helps. Even for myself, I know that I've been doing all my leadership stuff and my personal Toastmasters commitments have dropped. And I've had 2 people in the last week. I have my mentor who said, okay, let's look at our goals. We meet every couple weeks. We go through my goals. And even a fellow sponsor of my club said to me, so Jen, how is your path going? And it just made me check myself. So it's about being accountable and helping your fellow Toastmaster be accountable. Match up your goals, partner with someone. When you are getting new people in, match them up with a new Toastmaster, because sometimes having someone maybe who is an experienced Toastmaster can be daunting to a new Toastmaster. So buddy up two people who are starting icebreakers together and challenging on their level 1, etc. My corporate club, when CCs and the CLs were ending, my gosh, the partnering and the mentoring that was going on in our club was crazy because they were challenging each other. I'm going to get this done. And all of a sudden people were vying for speaking spots that they'd never done before. So all good points in all of this, but I think at the core of all of it, we just have to also extend grace to each other and just be understanding so that when a person has had a gap and is coming back, they know that it's a safe place to come. So.
Thank you. Any thoughts, Maria?
I just want to add that because we are experiencing some Zoom fatigue, which is another term that's going around quite a bit right now, it's really, really important to find ways to connect with each other, encourage people to turn their cameras on, and really inject some silliness or some fun into the virtual meetings. In a previous area director meeting, I heard somebody suggest that they have upside down meetings. I mean, how silly would that be if you have an entire meeting where everybody's upside down? Or have like a banner meeting where I know that, Bruce, you've got a Toastmasters banner behind you, but you can do something fun with that. You can have a beach theme where everybody finds a beach picture that they love and throw that up. There you go. So I think right now more than ever, it's really important to find ways to connect with each other, turn your cameras on, and find ways to be silly and laugh. I think when people have fun at the meetings, you're going to see them wanting to come back week after week.
Great point. Well, thank you. When I said at the beginning we had a panel of experts, you've proven my statement to be true. I think the collective wisdom here and experience, and we so much appreciate you taking your Saturday afternoon to share that with us. For our attendees, thank you. Obviously, this is important to you, important enough to give up your Saturday afternoon to join us. And thank you to our attendees so much. Now, we have talked a lot about the challenges, and sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. And if, we don't have time for more questions, but if you do have questions, reach out to one of the panelists or reach out to me and I can put you in touch with the panel. If you do have questions, you don't need to struggle alone. Reach out. If you're having challenges, reach out to your area director, reach out to one of the other corporate clubs. You don't need to struggle alone. And even though there are struggles, Maria has a success story, and I want her to share that with the group because you chart the path. It is doable. Maria, you want to share the story about Toast to Your Health?
Yeah, you bet, Bruce. Thank you so much. So when I joined the club 3.5 years ago, we were a struggling club. We only had about 11 members. So few people throughout the agency knew that our club even existed. I was able to quickly identify that we really needed more visibility within our agency. We needed more senior management support, and we needed to better utilize the agency's resources to help get the visibility that I felt our club so desperately needed. The club officers really came together, and we were really engaged and wanted to see our club succeed. We also had the support of an amazing club coach in my early days with our club. You might have heard of her. Her name is Wendy Williamson. I believe that she was supposed to have been with us for only 6 months, but those 6 months turned into a year and then into a second. Of course, she's no longer our club coach, but having her direction and support and encouragement was really valuable to our success. With our club officers, along with Wendy, we persisted, we brainstormed ideas, at every club executive meeting, and we had those every month, and focused on creating as much visibility as we could about our club without being too preachy was really a big focus for us. We developed a quarterly newsletter. We set up a number of different workshops and had senior managers as speakers, as I mentioned earlier, at our open houses. We had set the goal of reaching distinguished status, and you know what? All that hard work and club visibility really paid off, and we did it. And we wanted to keep that momentum going, and we set a new goal of reaching President's Distinguished the following year. Lo and behold, we met that too. It was really the hard work of the club officers and the club coach that made reaching this milestone a reality. We moved from struggling to President's Distinguished in just a couple of years. So the message that I really want to hammer home here is that you just have to be persistent. get senior management support, utilize the company resources to get you that visibility, brainstorm programs and events, and really highlight the value of your club to the corporate community. You too can get your club to distinguished status. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. And that is such an awesome story. I was in the club though all those years that was struggling, and you know, like, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. We got to keep going. And then, you know, for you to come in there and, you know, bring it to the point where we did reach distinguished, that is an amazing accomplishment and a testament to the club and to the club executive. So it can be done. So let's see lots of distinguished corporate clubs. Set that as your goal and keep working towards it. Be encouraged. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I can hear everybody clapping. Thank you to our panelists. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I would say, right, you've made some notes. What are the 1 or 2 things you're going to change in your club? What are the 1 or 2 new things you're going to do so that you've gained lots of valuable information here? What are you going to do differently now? What are you going to change? Discuss it with your executiveness next week. That's my challenge to you. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy the sunshine out there and have a great week, everyone. And thank you.